Central Time, 1 o'clock in Eastern, and it's about time to get started. So welcome everyone again to Planoly Presents. We're very excited to have you here for Building Community on TikTok in conversation with TikTok Tastemakers. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our first event of 2 digital events in our video planner series, which is all about helping you level up your video strategy for social media. We're going to give folks just a minute to hop on, but today we're joined by a panel of video content experts, and they're going to share their tips for how to leverage video to build community, as well as tips for overcoming video creation pain points and challenges and things like that. In addition, wanted to share, we have a 40% off coupon code today, and it's the code PLANVIDEO, all one word, for a Planoly paid plan. So you can try out our new video planner as well as other features to help you organize, plan, and post your content across your social channels. You'll get this code over email after the panel as well if you've registered, and we'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of the webinar. But if you're not familiar yet with Planoly, welcome. We're an all-in-one social media planner, and we're passionate about helping you simplify your social marketing workflow so you have more time to spend on all the other things you love. So once again, we're so excited to have you here. My name's Gianna. I'm part of the Planoly team in Austin, Texas. We asked a bit earlier, but as people come in, let us know where you're from in the comments below. We'd love to see where you're joining us from. It looks like we've had a few different countries already, so that's very excited. Before we get started and introduce the rest of the team here on our call, I wanted to share a few quick housekeeping items. One important note, please make sure to ask your questions as they come up in the Q&A box that's found in the bottom bar versus in our chat box, just to make sure our panelists can see them for the Q&A portion of our session. Also, we love to see you networking and trying to connect, but we want to limit networking in the chat box since it gets so flooded. But we encourage you to do so through Planoly's Facebook group after the webinar, which our team will provide a link to in the chat box. We'll also share a link to it via QR code at the end of the session. So rest assured, you'll have a link to be directed there. And lastly, if you've registered for the session, you'll also receive an email after the event with a recording of the session. So without further ado, I'll transition over to our host today, Candace, who is our Vice President of Marketing here at Planoly. She's going to introduce our awesome speakers today and moderate and kick off the panel. So thanks again, everyone, and over to you, Candace.
Thanks so much, Gianna, and welcome everybody. So excited to have you here to talk today about all things building community on TikTok. Super excited about our panel today. I will start by introducing everyone. So first we have Josh Hillard, who is joining us as the Global Head of SMB Marketing at TikTok. Josh has been at TikTok for over 2 years, and prior to joining TikTok, he spent several years at Meta, supporting many successful launches, which you might have heard of, little products like Instagram Stories, and many others across Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. So let's welcome Josh. Give Josh a warm welcome in the comment box.
Hi, thank you. So yeah, as I said earlier, I'm based in Austin, Texas, and I lead a small business marketing team here at TikTok that's really focused on helping businesses understand, what TikTok is all about, how to be successful, how to create great content. So really excited to talk about TikTok and amazing video content with all of you today.
Yay, welcome, Josh. So glad to have you. Next up, we have Shanika Hillix, who is joining us from New York. And Shanika is an independent brand strategy and marketing consultant. She's really has over a decade's worth of amazing storyteller experience. She's worked with brands and partners with companies like Forbes, Refinery29, and many other top brands in her career so far. So let's give Shanika a warm welcome in the comment box. Welcome.
Thank you, Candace. Really excited to speak about how storytelling is at the nucleus of my work and how video really helps amplify that. So thank you all for engaging.
Woohoo! All right, and last but certainly not least, we have Hannah McHugh. And Hannah is founder of Banana Brands, which is her own boutique agency that she provides specifically rebranding services that kind of center around social media strategies. She's passionate about helping wellness, beauty, and food and beverage clients succeed. And she's worked with amazing top brands like Ulta Beauty and many others, just to name a few. So let's give Hannah a warm welcome. Welcome, Hannah. Woo-hoo. Uh-oh, Hannah's muted. We'll give her a second. She might be frozen. Welcome, Hannah. We'll give you a second and we'll kind of kick it off here. So this one is just start the conversation by really going around to each of our panelists and learning a little bit about your favorite video trend and really why does this video trend represent you and your story? So we'll start with you, Josh. What's your favorite video trend?
Yeah, so many, but I mean, I think at a macro level, the trend that I'm most excited about is a transition we're seeing towards a real focus on authenticity. And I think some folks were talking about this in the comments as we were getting ready to hop on, but video allows for so much personality and storytelling, but we're really moving from a place where everything had to be polished and perfect and aspirational. And I love what we're starting to see, certainly on TikTok, but also on other platforms now, where we're seeing behind the scenes what a day in a small business owner's life is really like. For example, there's a great brand called Natural Annie Essentials that's based outside of New York City that sell these beautiful, great smelling candles if you're in the market for a new candle. But Annie certainly shows her, her products and tells her product story, but she's also showing us behind the scenes, like what it's like producing the candles, what it's like having her kids run around their workspace while they're creating the product. So you really get a sense of who she is and what she cares about and not just the product. So I love that we're seeing so much more of that.
Awesome. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's so fun to see more of the story. So Hannah, tell us a little bit about your favorite video trend and why does this kind of represent your story?
You got it. I'd have to say it's an oldie but a goodie. My favorite trend to introduce me is probably tell me you're a blank without telling me you're a blank. And mine's tell me you're a brand marketer without telling me you're a brand marketer. And all I would need to do is simply open my purse at any given place, time or place, and you'd probably see brand products, client products, at least one mini tripod. And that's because in the world of content marketing, really ABC means always be creating. You never know when you're going to find yourself in good lighting or in a particular aesthetic that could make for some really strong B-roll for a client that later could be used in a TikTok or a reel. So always keeping an eye out for content opportunities is really something that defines me and can annoy friends at times.
I love that. And Shanika, tell us about your favorite video trend and how it kind of represents your story.
Absolutely. So to build on Josh and Hannah's wonderful points, I really love the duet function and trend that is happening on video. I think it's a wonderful approach to not only touch B2B communication, B2C communication, but I know that some folks were talking about connecting with folks, and that's really powerful, I believe, to connect consumer to consumer as well. It really allows the ecosystem to not only contribute and see how people and fans are using your products, but also how people are responding culturally and socially. So it's a really wonderful thing to see. I think it's great when across languages, across ethnicities, beliefs, etc. And I really love that function as video continues to democratize the media space.
I love that. Awesome. Well, now that we have a little bit of a better kind of understanding of each of you, I just want to dive in here. So really, when we're thinking about running a small business, or if you're a social media manager, a consultant, an entrepreneur, it can seem like there's really never enough time in the day to create video content, and creating video content consistently can really be a huge undertaking and be really overwhelming. So what are some time-saving tips that you can provide to really help people develop their social content strategies efficiently? So let's start with you, Hannah. How do you really create efficiencies and save time?
I love this question. I highly recommend batching content. I feel like everybody talks about batching. So for those who are unfamiliar, this really just means organizing what marketing messages you want to get out there for a month. Maybe you have some holidays, maybe you're releasing a product, maybe there's an aspect of your brand you want to push a little harder, and working backwards from those themes and even copy lines so that when you're picking up a camera, you know it's strategic. You're not wasting time on content that doesn't work for you. So how do we do this efficiently? In my opinion, the best way to go into batching content is by preparing two things. One is inspo. And that sounds obvious, but TikTok is trend powered. So keep your inspo. Planoly has developed an excellent tool now for saving that onto a scratch pad that you can refer to later and iterate those concepts just by looking at and having handy. So as you scroll, you might come across something that immediately works for your brand and could be adapted right away, but you also might just like it. You like the feeling it created in you as a viewer. So saving it for later allows you to have that light bulb moment when you're concepting a post. And then the second thing to prepare is, and this I cannot emphasize enough, what are my brand pillars? There are a lot of creative ways to tell your story. And I think this is why a lot of new creators or brands can get overwhelmed. But not all of those creative stories are going to work for your ethos or resonate with your niche. So if your brand is highly visual, for example, like a beauty product, maybe this is going to sell itself already through its packaging or by being worn on camera. So you might choose humor as a great pillar to focus your content around, because the viewer gets what your product does, and maybe you want to use that time to make them love you as a brand. But say you're a food and beverage brand, and or maybe you're a brand that's more conscious. So the ingredients you use or where you source your materials is going to be a huge differentiator for you that needs to be emphasized regularly to stand out. You might have most of your content live in the education pillar or the brand ethos pillar. And knowing this helps you look out for content trends or opportunities that educate about how you source your product, how it's made, who's behind your company, what you guys are doing right now in terms of social impact or sustainability. So all this to say, when you're batching content, which is really going to look like previewing your month ahead and coming up with themes that you want to address, when you go to pick up that camera, be sure that you have some inspo in mind that you can refer to. That'll make things a lot more quick for you, but also know what content is going to fit within those pre-established brand pillars, and that'll really keep you on track with a clear identity. So that's my best tip.
Awesome. Great tips, Hannah. So Shanika, you're next. What are some time-saving tips and tricks when you're looking and helping brands develop social video strategies?
Sure. I really like how Hannah really set the stage with the brand pillars. That's really your strong foundation. But I also love to leave room and space in that calendar that you're planning a month ahead or even 2 weeks ahead for cultural and social listening opportunities. I think there are lots of things that are happening where we're all kept apprised via our social feeds. And it's really lovely to leave maybe a day every week in your calendar to say, am I going to incorporate something that is highly culturally relevant, whether it's a Tiny Desk concert that may have been really relevant and exciting. I know that Usher has been a source of a lot of content as of late, or it can be something like a new album, a Beyonce drop. So being able to leave that room and space. And I would also, as another build, utilize the integrations that are actually within the app. Those are used to really create and sometimes offer inspiration that you might be kind of hitting the wall saying, what should I do? Or I'm in a rut creatively. So use things like polls, use things like Q&A, use things like GIFs even, or memes. So I would say tap into the very things that are at your fingertips as well to help with the efficiency there.
I love that. Great tips. So Josh, bring us home. What are some time-saving tips? Here, I did it again. Tips and tricks for creating video content.
Yeah, I love everything Hannah and Shanika shared. I'll share something that I think is maybe a little bit more focused on the actual content creation. As we talk to small businesses and I have conversations with them about how they think about what they're creating, I definitely hear a lot how it can be overwhelming to think about creating different kinds of content for different platforms. And then you start to think, you're going to need to do shoots different days of the week for these different platforms. And that can very quickly become too much. So think about how you can combine these efforts together and do all of this in one shoot. So for example, if you have a product or retail space you're really proud of course, despite the authenticity trend I mentioned, you're going to still want to shoot beautiful, glossy images of your product and your retail store. And you should continue to do that. but think about how you shoot B-roll behind the scenes as you're doing that. So how do you see setting up the shot, getting the models or the products ready, making the decisions about lighting. And then I've seen, amazing TikToks from small businesses where they're actually taking that B-roll and showing us kind of the journey of the photo shoot, and then ending with paying it off by showing us like the reveal of your amazing photos. So then all in once, you've created, amazing content that works just as well for, static platforms where that kind of glossy content is relevant. But at the same time, with really no extra time, you've created really compelling video content.
That's awesome. Yeah. And really building on that, Josh, based on your learnings working at TikTok, what are the kind of the most underutilized TikTok tools? And how can kind of creators, social media managers, small businesses really use certain tools to make their videos more accessible and reach more people?
Yeah, I think a big secret weapon that, maybe people who are newer to TikTok or haven't really experimented with it yet might not know exists is an auto edit feature. So basically this allows you to take any existing photos and videos you have, put them into the system, pick a music track that, represents your brand, and the app will actually edit your content to fit the rhythm of the music track. And it creates a pretty great video very easily. It's like literally the press of one button. So if you want to shoot something that's totally new and like weave those videos together, you can, but maybe start with the stuff you already have. If you have, some great video clips and photos that have performed really well elsewhere, think about how those things could live together, and then let the app do the hard work of doing that edit for you.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I feel like that's such a great way to get started and just dip your toe in the water if you're uncomfortable using that auto edit feature. I love that. So Shanika, this one's for you. Given your background in influencer marketing, what are some best practices that you think every influencer or creator should adopt when building a video first strategy?
Thank you for this question. I have legal and compliance kind of like ringing in the back of my head when I think about influencers, particularly because the creator space has grown so immensely over the last couple of years. I think it's really important to think about, and on the heels of what Josh said regarding audio, attribution and credibility. Obviously with the music feature, and if it's an original audio or an audio from a specific artist, that is easily integrated and it gives credit to that performer, that artist. But because there are also the virality of various sound bites and things where folks are not being attributed, that's really important to take stock. And even from an audio non-audio perspective, even thinking about some of the quotations or sources, there's a lot of educational packages that oftentimes people will create. So just ensuring that you're tagging that creator, as many taps as it takes to get back to the original source, I think is really important, just to avoid any kind of conflict, crisis communication, or removal of the content that you end up putting really hard work into.
I love that. Making sure you're kind of giving credit where credit is due. I think that's a great tip. Hannah, over to you. This one's for you. So Banana Brands specializes in brand building, specifically rebranding. And based on your experience, what role can video play in helping a business up-level its brand equity and brand awareness?
Oh my goodness, what a loaded question. I love this question though. So let me count the ways. First, the data is non-negotiable, right? If you don't jump on the video transition, you're going to be left behind. I hate to say that, if your static engagement isn't already suffering. And that's because, like we were saying earlier at the intro call, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, the video really is worth 1,000,000. It's just more entertaining. You can pack more information and feeling into it. Plus, people love music. So social media is moving towards video, whether we like it or not. So that's the first thing that I like to remind people. The second thing is when you show your audience that you can create, particularly if you're a product business, you're inspiring them to create with your product. You could even inspire duets, as Shanika was talking about, with your product if you're original enough, or maybe you just get a ton of customer insights because you're leveraging the question or poll stickers. So you really, if you show that you can create, you're going to get more out of the platform too. But beyond that, showing video can create trust. So think about it this way: customers want to engage with brands that are real like them and share the same interest in particular TikTok trends, or maybe have the same sense of humor. So it can create trust with your customer base and your audience, but also retailers if you're looking to distribute. So how many products can you think about that have been in a headline as selling out or gotten into a retailer because of a viral TikTok? It really can create demand. And even if you don't generate sales right away from a viral TikTok, it's creating interest that you can point to with a numerical figure and use to gain opportunities, not just with distributors, but with high quality creators. And if they think you're cool, they might even give you a better rate. So you're creating trust with your audience. You're showing that you're like them. You create trust with a retailer who might want to carry your product because they trust you're going to generate interest and demand, and they won't be sitting on all this inventory. So the opportunities are endless as a brand. But if you look at paid media, the last thing I have to say is I do a ton of ads. Got to talk about them. Right now, the ad space is tricky, and a lot of brands are worried that they're lighting money on fire when they put paid media dollars behind a video. So use TikTok as a testing grounds and then amplify what's working. So you might come into an ad making assumptions about your audience and what they're going to like, but then the data tells you a completely different story, or you learn something entirely new based on what actually gets circulation. And that's incredible. That's incredible insight that you can use to run advertisements later with less risk. So all these things work together to really level up your brand equity. You show that you're a competent brand. You show that you're really up to speed with content trends. You're creating trust and good feelings with your audience. And you're also opening the door to opportunities with distribution partners. So I can't emphasize the power of video enough. And it's coming for everybody, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, that's a great segue into the next question, which we'll ask each panelist individually. But really, we've all talked about, video is kind of hard to tap into and might be uncomfortable for some people. So with that in mind, for those who don't usually create video content and haven't really transitioned yet into this video first world, what is your advice for the first detailer approach that small businesses, social media managers can translate from static content and their static content strategy into this kind of video first strategy? So we'll start with you, Shanika, on this one. What do you think?
Sure. I really love that you highlighted small businesses, because I think while we know the economy of digital and social consultants, et cetera, is growing, a lot of small businesses often don't look at that until they've gotten to a certain point. So oftentimes the owners or proprietors are sometimes doing the social media until they can get to a stage where they can scale. So I oftentimes will arm a lot of my small business clients to say, what do you have at your fingertips? That's your phone. As you know how to take a still image, I oftentimes love to keep the camera on the live function as I'm snapping something. Even as Josh mentioned, if we're doing a product shoot and utilizing the time during the day to do multiple shoots or highlights of certain things, being able to snap that in both still and then maybe translate the ones that are most exciting, or there's a soft kind of movement of a hand or a flip of a page of a book, and then converting that into a video could really make a wonderful reel after it's all said and done, with about 50 images or so, or a specific video that highlights behind the scenes or a day in the life or a product feature. So I think it's a really simple trick that everyone kind of has. I mean, that's specific to iPhone. I'm not sure about the other type of phones out there, but it is something that you can keep on your phone in the camera settings and just ensure that those photos are also saved as live images.
Oh, such a great tip. I love that so much, because half the time you don't even realize that live feature is on and that you can use those as videos later. So that's great. Josh, over to you. So how do you kind of recommend small businesses, creators, social media managers translate their static content strategy over to their video strategy, and how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd say is, don't be intimidated. I think as people think about making that shift, it can definitely feel very daunting, and I understand that. But what the core of your content, your video creation is going to be is the hard work you've already done. So you've built your product, you've done all the development, you've created your brand and figured out how to tell your brand story. And not only that, you figured out how to do it really well in a static space. So don't think about it as starting from scratch. and having to, pivot to create a totally different kind of content. People want to hear your story. Like I was saying in the very beginning, authenticity is really like what we see working really well, certainly on TikTok, but more and more, like I'm hearing from the small businesses we work with, that they're seeing the success from that approach on other platforms too. So really start thinking about, like, how did you tell us the story of how you developed your product and create a video around that? Show us your product in use. Show us what customers love about your product. A great example of this is a brand called Love and Pebble that we've done some work with, and they had an amazing viral video that took off, and it got them onto Shark Tank, and they sold out of all their products. But their first video is really them showing actually one of the founders' mothers using the product. So it's like something they shot at home on a phone, and it actually ties back to the creation of the product. It's like a frozen beauty skincare product. And it came from one of the founders using frozen bananas on her face as a part of like a beauty regimen. So they just told that story. It wasn't a completely new production. It wasn't in a studio. It wasn't with high-end equipment. So just think about tapping into, those stories and narratives that already exist around your brand and your product and your business.
Amazing tip. I love that so much. So over to you, Hannah, to bring us home. What is the first detailer approach that can translate from static content strategy into video strategy? And how do you recommend that social media managers or brands go about doing that?
Well, I love the tips that Josh and Janika shared. Honestly, those are killer. And to sort of echo what they're saying, my best advice is it's not all that different. I produce a lot of static imagery for brands, and the same approaches you take to light a shot or style it with props are going to work for video. So if you're intimidated by emulating all the trends we're seeing, and maybe that's not your generation, or maybe you're not comfortable yet, some of the best performing videos can essentially be a static setup with one simple movement that looks mesmerizing. So let's give an example of a tea brand or a CBD oil where the setup's like a mug with a lit candle and a book, maybe some props. So you have an aesthetic that's set up and totally still, but then your product's being poured or it's being held in a hand. So all you have to do now with that very simple B-roll clip is run an inspirational trending sound over it. And you can look on various Discover pages to see what's hot right now. One I saw recently was, don't let the year from now you wish you started earlier, start now. And that really worked with this sort of sensorial feeling that this video created, which also worked with the brand's ethos. Boom, throw some lo-fi music on there. And now you have a really, really simple video that you didn't need to follow a trend to create. But I will say you're a brand and your super strong static content is not the aesthetic, pretty imagery, which you're already good at. Say it's like a testimonial or a graphic explaining how well your product works. How do you translate that into video? Well, video can explain even better than a graphic, right? It's forgiving. With no production value, you can show rather than tell. And to use a really good example, I once took a time lapse with a cleaning product that was a client of mine. And I was cleaning a kitchen sink for something like 30 seconds, sped it up. It was one cut. But I added a voiceover saying, my friend's sink was so dirty, he tried every product, but I said, give me 2 minutes and I'll whiten your sink, and voila. And because there was a really stark before and after, and there was no movie magic, this particular video, which was zero production value and one clip, obviously outperformed everything this brand had posted, but it hit 60,000 views in 24 hours. And anybody could have made this. So if you have a product that really works and what you think is its selling point is really just its performance, go ahead and show that. As Josh said, if there's somebody on the team or you have a founder that has a big personality and they can best show how your product works, just turn on the camera and hit record, because you really don't need much if there's a real story message to be told on its own. So depending on your brand's skill sets and really what it's doing well already with static, if your challenge is how do I move over to video, think about the littlest things you can change to communicate the same strong message, but in video form. That would be my best advice.
That's awesome advice. Thank you so much, everyone. So we're actually midway through, and I want to actually pause for a second and start taking, we're getting amazing questions in the Q&A box. So I want to take some of these questions and I'll kind of pivot them around the room based on who I think can probably provide the best answer. One of the questions that's really top of mind and an anonymous attendee asked first is really like, I feel like I'm trying to do everything, but my videos still aren't taking off. What do you recommend I should do? So I'm going to kick this one to you, Josh. Any tips on kind of trying to help this person get their videos to take off and get that viral video that everyone's hoping for?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I'd say is keep going. You're doing the right thing. You know, I've heard the story from so many small businesses that have had to try again and again to figure out how to tell their story, to have the right tonality of their video, and then, you know, again, eventually struck gold with a viral video and sold out of all their products and are, you know, in the great position of maybe having to stop creating content because they don't have any product left to sell. But beyond that, you know, I think we've heard some great advice from Shanika and Hannah to really think about trends. So, you know, make sure you're using these platforms yourself. You're looking at what kinds of content are interesting and engaging. You know, within TikTok, there's the Discover tab. If you hit the little magnifying glass icon on the upper right, you'll see what kinds of content are performing really, really well on the platform. And you can model off of that. So maybe if, you know, you've tried telling your story again and again in different ways and you're not seeing the response you're looking for, you know, is there a trend where you can use a sound that's doing really well and build your version or of that video or your response to that sound? Another key thing I'd suggest is looking in the commercial music library on TikTok, and I think other platforms have similar tools. But in there, you'll see what are the top 10 sounds that people are using or the top 10 video filters that people are using, and begin to build around those things. So that way you're already kind of in the zeitgeist, you're a part of what people are engaging with on the platforms and certainly on TikTok, and that can give you a bit of a running head start. And then last, I'd say, just make sure you're always reading your comments. So if you're not seeing, you know, even if you're not seeing hundreds of thousands of views, if you're getting a handful of comments, what are they telling you? What do they want to see more of? You know, comments are really kind of like the hidden guide that, you know, we don't always take as seriously. But the audience is telling you like more of this. I would rather hear, you know, X, Y, or Z. So pay attention to those things and think about how you can integrate that into your approach.
Great advice. Thank you, Josh. So this next one, I'm going to ask to you, Hannah. So I want to give a plug, and I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but Hannah has actually been on our customer advisory board at Planoly, helping us build out our new video planning tool. So this question really hits on a lot of the things that we've been talking closely with Hannah about. But how do you manage your workflow, essentially from collecting an idea to starting to draft a video, to actually filming it and then posting? What does your workflow look like today, and what different tools do you use?
This is a tricky question because I think everybody's very different. And when you look at the creative space, the people who tend to be creating the content and managing it, being posted out, all have very different ways of keeping themselves organized. What works for me might not work for everybody, but I need tools, tech tools to help me. So I have Team Slack, but I also really love Asana because I can see my workflow in visual boards and columns. I'm super visual, I'm the whiteboarder type. So I like to use tools, including Planoly, as a great way to auto schedule content, previously for Instagram, and now of course helping develop the TikTok planner. There's a lot of exciting features being rolled out so that you can organize your inspo, start to caption and plot out where TikTok content would be released throughout a month. So I use all of those things, but I think the best way to stay organized is by having the work sort of halfway done when you go into planning. So that stems back to my earlier response about sort of seizing the moment, having a camera ready at all times to capture some really quick B-roll so that when you scroll your feed and you see some inspo, you can connect it to a piece of content that you might have grabbed on the go, or to Josh's point earlier, taken from behind the scenes of an existing production or marketing effort or whatever your brand is up to. Maybe you're packing inventory in the back and you say, you know what? I don't know what the content is going to end up being published as, but I'm going to go ahead and take some B-roll because maybe I'll see something on my feed that will inspire me to emulate it. And good news for me, I've got this library of video to use. So being prepared like that, with that always on, always creating approach, allows you to jump into a platform like Planoly or Asana and start to visualize, well, what do I have in my library? Where does that fit within my marketing messages I need to plan into? And I personally don't think it matters where this lives. And that really obviously depends on your team size too. If you don't have a lot of collaborators and you're a one-woman show, I mean, you might even use a Google Sheet really to link out to a drive where you keep your content. So I'm all about working from scrappy to complex. It just depends on where you're at in your business and what your content plans look like, how often you're posting. But I think the biggest hack is just having content to start with. That's what I have to emphasize there.
I love it. I sense a theme here that's really around always be filming whatever you're doing. Just capture the footage and figure out how you're going to do it later. So it's a great awesome. This one I think would be great for you, Shanika. So I know I hear this all the time from small businesses and just anyone trying to dip their toe in the water with video, but how do I get over my fear of being cringe?
This is such an interesting question to me because, as Hannah mentioned, everyone's experience and kind of what type of cringe kind of drums up in them can be very different. I think really just being able to do it first. And I know that we've been talking a lot about qualitative and quantitative KPIs. I would even challenge everyone kind of in the chat to even take a step back from that. I think it's so easy when it comes to content to think about numbers and attributing those numbers to success. But I always like to also go back to, why did you start your business? What are you aiming to say? What is the story that really got you excited in the beginning of your brainstorm or in your ideation or the birthing of that? And then go back to that and say, okay, because I love that my mother introduced me to this ingredient, I have now created these more accessible and modern ingredients, and I want to tell those stories. Here is how. Or making sure that even from a founder, if something has happened in a shift and you're noticing that you want to change from this type of packaging to more sustainable packaging, being able to tell that story and your reason why. So I think always going back to that is important, even with the trending topics, even with hashtags, even with trending audio, etc. Going back to your source, aka yourself, I think is something that's really important. Also, too, I think having sort of trusted folks, well, even if you're in the small business stage, while you might not have a social media manager or a content or creative director, do you have a trusted circle of folks who have kind of been down with you from the beginning to say, hey, I'm thinking about launching a series where I highlight 5 women entrepreneurs every single month. Does this feel like it's too girl bossy? Does it feel like it's redundant? And how would you maybe kind of approach that? So having a trusted source of advisors, whether they're in a more formal relationship or not, is another thing that I really like to kind of lean on, especially when I'm coming into like a creative funk or a content funk.
Great tips. So this next one is really interesting and it's coming from Kelsey. And I think I want to get everyone's perspective on this. So we'll start with you, Josh, but then we'll go around the room. What are some of your favorite brands or companies right now on TikTok? And, you know, who do you think is essentially doing video content right? And can you share some examples so that we can all kind of add them to our list of people we follow and get inspo from?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've mentioned a couple that I think are doing a great job. So Natural Annie Essentials, I would definitely check out. Love and Pebble is doing great content and has seen a ton of success and doing really interesting stuff with kind of a lo-fi approach, which I saw there's some questions about that here as well. There's a brand called Habit Skincare that's creating great content and really across a really interesting variety. So there's some humor in there, there's product demos, there's sort of like influencer creator content in the mix as well. And then last, there's a restaurant or group of restaurants based here in Austin called Te Quiero Mucho that does amazing, really cute content. I mean, it's a bright pink restaurant, bright pink drinks. So they've definitely set themselves up for content creation, but they do an amazing job, again, with sort of like a mix of different kinds of content, but you can tell it's all shot with a phone, developed kind of in-house, and they've done phenomenally well.
That's awesome. Hannah, over to you. What are some of your favorite brands and companies on TikTok right now?
Well, gosh, there are so many. I'd say here's one really strong case study in how to be a brand and exist on all social media platforms, leaning into what's really native to each of those platforms. And I'm not even the target customer, but to me, they're hashtag goals, and it's Dr. Squatch. So Josh, you might be familiar. They make soap for men. But you look at all channels, including even their YouTube ads, and they have truly nailed their customer. And now they put out all sorts of collabs and drops, like with Star Wars and other big properties. But if you look at their Instagram, it's entirely memes that are really relevant and funny to their young male audience. But their TikTok is also a sort of different approach where they're really responding to trends, and they're really leaning into humor, and they almost never talk about what their product does. They don't really have to. They just lean into who the customer is and what they're thinking about, and they slide their product into the storytelling in such a delicate way that just works. And I think if you look at their traditional paid media as well, they're running these like fully produced film production ads where they have this mascot man who's in the woods telling you why your soap sucks and you should be using this other product. And because it still has that humor DNA, it really works. And they can use that same production and chop it up efficiently to feed their Instagram and TikTok feeds. So I think that's a really great brand to look into if you are a product and you think that maybe you're tempted to follow all the traditional ways of marketing a product, but there's something about your core ethos that you want to get behind. I think be a little fearless and don't worry about everything looking pretty. Grids don't matter anymore. The way the algorithm is pushing content onto news feeds means people will see a post from 2 weeks ago if it has a resurgence. So there should be less concern with making everything look so curated. And I think people should spend their energy and time leaning into who they are as a brand, whatever that looks like. And in the case of Dr. Squatch, they have grabbed humor and found how it translates across every native platform. But if you're in a niche and you're a product brand, I will say PSA, throw your product in the chat, and I'd love to give you a specific brand example that you can look into. I work with all sorts of brands, so Dr. Squatch is just an example of a holistically strong company as it relates to social.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Yeah, feel free to ask for specifics in the chat. I know I saw one for real estate a while ago, so lots coming in. Shanika, what are your favorite brands or companies right now on TikTok?
Absolutely. So being very active in the food and beverage vein, I have two food brands that I actually kind of hearkened to in the last example, but the first would be Som. They are a kind of pantry staples approach to quick sauces from Asian cultures. So you can make your pad thai or your larb, or etc. I really love that although there are two main co-founders, they really have taken a collective approach. You can really, their team members all take turns showcasing product, how they're using them at home. They had definitely showcased really fun, bright, loud colors. And so reflecting that in like a behind the scenes tour of their newly designed office, the way that they incorporate the information when a new flavor drops is really also exciting. So I feel like they do a wonderful job of educating, showcasing product utility, and also showing that it's a cohesive and really passionate team. In a similar vein, I really love Diaspora Co. Spices. They really do a wonderful job, of ensuring that payment is sent directly when you purchase a spice to the farmers in the various Southeast Asian nations, which I think is really wonderful. They do a wonderful job of storytelling, showcasing the founder and her family. She is South Asian from Indian descent. So just being able to kind of see in the fields, touching the product, even understanding, hey, this is turmeric that you might see in a traditional grocery store aisle. Here is our turmeric, and the color, the flavor, what you should be looking for. So really appreciate that storytelling and that brand aesthetic as well. And I also kind of want to piggyback on what Hannah said too, is while these people are definitely utilizing video forward, I am also a subscriber to their newsletter. So it's a wonderful way to kind of be hit many times with their ethos, allowing us to really see how the story is being told on one medium versus another, but still using that main source of content several times, as kind of we alluded to kind of in earlier questions and responses.
Oh, these are all so great. So many great inspirational brands and accounts to follow. And it's been really fun seeing all the different products and services that the whole group is marketing across the board. There's so much variety and so many things, so much great content to be had out there. So looking forward to diving in and seeing all the different examples that were shared. So I want to end on one question, and I'm going to point this one your way, Josh. We're getting a lot of different questions on like, what's the best way to stay on top of the latest trends so that you're not continuously spending hours and hours scrolling each week? We know trends kind of come and go pretty quickly, but what's your recommendation on staying atop the latest trends?
Yeah, so I wouldn't, recommend by any means that you have to spend hours a day on on any platform, but I do think it's important to be a user of the platform you're creating for. And I think sometimes, especially when something's new, so like maybe you've seen TikTok videos in other places, like on Reels, but maybe you haven't used TikTok yourself. Like, get in that feed, start to see what's out there. And then the things I mentioned already, like that discover page, click that magnifying lens in the top right. That's going to always tell you what the top trends are at that moment, updated live every single day. So if you really want to cut to the chase and, maybe you aren't spending enough time to curate your feed yet, or you're just in the very beginning, that's an amazing place to start. And then there's, great ways in if you start to search for businesses that are in your category, your niche. So if you search in there, you'll see what are the top videos in restaurants and beauty and whatever the category might be. And that's also a really easy way to see what's successful. So, I think the best thing to do is always to sort of kind of see it for yourself, and you'll start to catch the rhythm of those trends. But if you're in the very beginning, that discover page is really going to be the key to, or your shortcut to getting there quicker.
Awesome. That's super helpful, Josh. And I have to give a shameless plug on Planoly paid plans. Now we actually have a new feature where there's a calendar event every week on the calendar that's showcasing 3 kind of trending video things that are coming up that week. So our social team is curating those. They're staying on top of these trends as we create content. So we're sharing kind of what we think are the most relevant trends. So definitely take a look at that if you're on a Planoly paid plan. And really, I want to bring us home and wrap us up. Thank you guys so much. I think there's been so much helpful discussion and tips and inspirational things that we can all go look and follow after the fact. So I so appreciate the time, and I know everyone on the call does as well. And really, this is a series. So this is the first in our Planoly Presents series around video planning. If you haven't already, I really recommend that you register for our session next week, which is a demo of our new video planning tool. Riley Pearl, our lead product marketing manager at Planoly, will be rocking us through the tool, and we'll have another member of our customer advisory board who's been in the weeds helping us create that tool and sharing some tips on how she's planning on using it as well. So we'll kind of go over the tool as it exists today and planning for TikTok, and then we'll share some sneak previews of what's coming up as well. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Gianna to close us out. I know she mentioned a coupon code earlier in the session and has a couple more things to wrap up. Gianna, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Candace and everyone. So that does conclude our panel session, but before you go, I wanted to share a few important things like Candace mentioned. As I mentioned earlier, we're super excited to offer you an exclusive 40% off discount code for Planoly. paid plan so you can try out the full capability of our video planner and other tools. So make sure to enter the code that you see on the screen, plan video, or try out our 7-day free trial. Just go to planoly.com to upgrade or create an account. And just to emphasize, it must be on our website that you apply the code, not on our mobile app. So you'll also see a QR code at the bottom right of this slide. This is going to direct you to the series registration page, so you can RSVP for the next event taking place next week, like Candace mentioned. If you haven't already, we'll be demoing Video Planner again, and we'll also be speaking with a social media coach who's very successful on TikTok. She will share her tips and tricks as well for creating a strong video strategy. Video storytelling has transformed the digital landscape, and it's so important to have your strategy in place. So we're really looking forward to seeing you there. Once you have gone through the QR code and gotten to the page, make sure to scroll down to the very bottom to a section called Resources. That's where you're going to find some links to learn more about Video Planner and its features. You'll also see a link to a really handy downloadable guide to video strategy that our social experts put together for you, as well as a link to join our Facebook group where you can continue to connect with our Planoly community. So that about wraps it up for today. Thank you once again to our speakers, Candace, and to all of you for joining us today. You will be receiving an email with a recording of the session, as well as our discount code, which is valid through the end of July only. So make sure to jump on that. And we're so excited to see you next week at our final workshop of the Video Planner series. Thank you, everyone.
Yay. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Likewise, thank you.
Thanks.